Hello and welcome to AXSChat. We're delighted to welcome Rene Perkins today to be with us. Rene is the CEO of CityMaaS. CityMaaS is a mobility as a service platform aimed at persons with disabilities. Great to have you with us. Transportation and being able to get around is a really key topic for our audience. So it's really exciting to hear what you're doing. So can you tell us a little bit about CityMaaS and how you came to be working in this space?
So CityMaaS is a platform using intelligent algorithm and machine learning needs, such as accessibility needs, in order to provide that optimization routing, booking and payment, all from end-to-end service on one single platform. And the kind of a higher vision of what CityMaaS is trying to do is facilitate that spontaneous, inclusive, and also a very efficient travel for disabled people in smart cities. So it's using machine learning techniques to take into account park crowdsource accessibility information such as lift out of service, accessible space is not available, or simply the disabled toilets or facilities are not in operation. And that kind of things get feedback to the community. So the platform would really just create that community feel where everybody be able to contribute to everybody's journey in every single journey. So for example, if I live in a station out of service and a wheelchair users, it's at the station, they will be able to crowdsource that information back to the platform for the next journey on the platform to avoid the same mistake happen. That will really save people's time as well as the stress and anxiety come with it, because if you are on your route to a meeting or interview or whatever it is, then you're running late because of the inaccurate information or unavailable real-time information that's resulting that kind of emotional stress. So that's a kind of a big idea, a good idea of what we're trying to do. And we're primarily focused on two main categories at the moment, which is the mobility impaired people and as well as visually impaired people. But we were extending our service to hearing impaired and cognitive impaired categories as well.
No, in London, there are a few, Transport for London, they provide sources of open data that can be used by different organizations. There are also sites like Airbnb or TripAdvisor. They have areas where you are able to go and identify if a venue is accessible or not. Are you using also? Are you trying to source information from this type of entities, or you are relying more on user feedback?
We would like to have a combination of both, because we believe that there are some pros and cons of both information. So in terms of crowdsourced information, that there is a disadvantage in a way that potentially the information might not be accurate or the right information. So we will seek to really use whatever open data is necessary, such as the TfL Open API data in real-time cancellations and delays, and essentially look into the social media side of announcement in terms of real-life events, such as the entrance in Bond Street, entrance B in Bond Street is closed today, for example, to kind of provide that feedback into the algorithm, so that the algorithm take into account that piece of information to optimize that routing for the next journey on the platform.
Okay, so if let's say if someone is listening to us, let's say, and that was I have responsibility to manage an airport and responsibility for accessibility, and I really want to create a good experience. Are you encourage them to reach you out, or you are the ones, you are the ones who are going to do that type of activity? Okay, there's an organization here, transport organization, that is really accessible. We are going to reach them out. So how that communication workflow will work?
If I understanding your question correctly, so how it works in CityMaaS is where once user sets up their profile indicating their type of disabilities, their preferences.
No, if I manage an airport.
Okay, you manage an airport, okay.
And I have I want to make sure that people that are traveling to my airport have a good experience in terms of accessibility. And I really putting the effort on making sure that all my space and all the journey that people do in the airport is accessible. Okay. Mm-hmm. So how should I reach you out? Or you are the ones mapping those sites who have a high quality of accessibility in your platform?
So there are already basic information already in the platform where the locations of disabled toilet, for example, or the accessible entrance is, etc. So those kind of infrastructural information is there already, but on top of that, the users on the platform be able to crowdsource and feed that back. They are subjective views, if you like. Say the staff from this particular airport is extremely helpful. They provide extra direct me to the right place, or negative kind of a feedbacks where the staff wasn't really interested, wasn't engaging, wasn't listening to what my questions is or my needs is, and that kind of information will kind of be taken into account. Depends on whether that's a kind of alert or an opinion subjective information back to the platform in order to have various different ways. So it depends on what kind of, it's a combination of both to answer to some of your questions.
Rene, welcome to the program. We're honored to have you here. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So I'm going to step back for a second. So I'm assuming that I have an app that I put on my iPhone or on my Android or my tablet, and then you have these algorithms and the crowdsourcing and everything. But is that the right assumption? I mean, how does somebody get engaged in this? What is the practical way that people get engaged? And I would also assume one more thing, Rene, that even if I'm a person that doesn't have a visible disability but maybe I'm somebody that cares about the community, or somebody that is part of the community but I don't need these services, that I could also engage and be part of the solution. So
that's an excellent question. Sorry, I haven't made it clear from right at the beginning where CityMaaS platform is a platform which is a back-end algorithm to provide that kind of optimal routing and booking payment services for people with disabilities, but also it will have a user interface or app. People can interact with a self-adapted UX UI journey based on the type of disabilities they have when they set up their profile. So it could be a voiceover, could be kind of visual control, depends on their preferences as well. That can have both, depends on the degrees of visual impairment they have. That's how we will encourage the users to really engage with the community, not only be able to get from the information, benefit from the information that other people provide in a geolocation information, which is specific to where they currently are, and also the routes on their route to the destinations they put in. So that's how we will, create that community to help each other out in terms of overcome that daily travel obstacles for people with disabilities, whether it's, just a simple kind of confirmation that you are right, that the lift is our service, or more in-depth information such as don't go to that station today. It's a nightmare. The entrance is constantly changing. We don't know what's happening. It's too crowded, and two entrances closed, for example. So that's the first question. I think the second question really made me have a big smile because that's exactly point that we want to make, that this app, although is really taking into considerations for disabled people's needs, a lot of accessibility information will be on it, but it also allows able-bodied to crowdsource back the accessibility information and encourage the people on the platform that may not have a disability or may not be impacted by that particular problem on their routes, to give it back to the community to help avoiding problems. Able-bodied people will be able to download the app. They'll be able to go, same as optimizations of their routing when they're putting their starting point and end points. And then there's various different options of cross-modal transportation, whether it's buses, tubes, trains, taxi, share rides, and that type of thing. And they will be able to choose which options they like to go to based on their preferences, whether it's time press or cost conscious, or weather or sustainable transportation conscious options for them. And through the whole journey, and depends on the location, it depends on what the problem is. When they come up, it's kind of a dynamic view. It will pop up in the screen whenever they come across something that somebody report. They can almost like Waze.
I was going to say that. I was going to say it reminds me of Waze, right?
That's right. It's like Waze for accessible travel for disabled people. But the able-bodied people will be able to contribute to that, because there will be a system to encourage good citizen behavior, if you like.
I was thinking about Waze, and I know that Google now owns Waze, and it's interesting because I use both of them, and sometimes they confuse me because they have different things to say, and they confuse me as I'm traveling. But that's me. But you know what I think is interesting beyond what you're doing is pretty powerful, and to me it's what the future looks like. But I think something that, as you're talking about it, that I was thinking that would be so cool as a byproduct is that often we don't understand each other's journeys. And so can I really understand the journey of a person that is blind navigating their way through a London airport? I've traveled with many of my friends that are blind, but I think this also has the opportunity to help us better understand each other. So if I'm a person that's deaf and I use sign language, but the captioning isn't working on the airplane, or I can think of other things, or the emergency information, and it just seems like this continues to help bring us together so that we understand. I don't want you to look at me and feel sorry for me. But the reality, if you can understand my journey, and I'll give you an example. I travel often with my husband and my daughter, who both now have cognitive disabilities. And so the need for me to understand what is ahead of me, what in my journey is going to be an obstacle, would be so helpful, not only to me, but my husband and my daughter. And so I just see all this really powerful abilities for us to understand each other also. So I just want to make that comment.
No, that's definitely, there are definitely two, I think you touched two good elements of it. One is the data that we're collecting. The other one is the community side of things, where it's the data that we're collecting includes the insights of the pain points that the end user is encountering when they're traveling. And that obviously, in your specific example, will provide a bit more insights in insights in terms of what kind of maybe idea of assistance or idea of awareness of some the difficulties they might encounter or not be able to demonstrate or express. and hence help you to better understand, how better connect, if you like, with your children. So the data is so valuable in a way that's one part of it. The powerful data can also enable us to share with, say, city planning authorities, to enable them to really understand which area is really a problematic area. Do we need the bus stop to be a little bit more, or to move that side to another, or to really think about efficient travel in the city for disabled people as well as able-bodied people. So that's another really powerful or goosebump data usage that come out from the CityMaaS platform. And also on top of that, obviously you'll be able to help the say TfL London, TfL Transport for London, to help them to better service their customer when they're in their tube stations and train stations as well. So yeah, that's just a very two key points that you touched there.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where we can see lots of benefits from multiple sides. When we're looking from the transport provider side, they have a need to, at a basic level, get people through their facilities as quickly as possible. And when we have issues for persons with disabilities, not only does it impact that person, but it's also bottom line impacting them, because they then end up, the system gums up around the person as well. So it's really bad for the user with a disability, because not only are they frustrated that they're not able to get to where they need to go to, they then also are made to feel uncomfortable, because what's happening around them is that people are getting frustrated. This is the nature of human beings, that, when we're in commute mode, we don't really care about anyone else. It's like, I'm going from A to B and get out of my way. That they don't want to know about the cause of the delay. So we want to, help remove those kind of problems, make it easier for everyone to travel. So that data is precious. I think that, that real-time feedback, you need the loop between, ideally what you want is that feedback loop between the users reporting, what it's like for them experiencing their transit through the station, or their journey in traffic, or their bus ride or train ride or whatever, back to the service provider, and equally the service provider can then use that data to look at how they can remove those bottlenecks in future. Because again, time is money. If you're trying to get people onto a train, each one of those persons on the train is of some kind of financial value to you. I'm being very cold and economic about it, but it's absolutely true. This is how people are running their businesses or running their services. So that's really important. But on the plus side, also, you want the economic empowerment of allowing people with disabilities to go about their business, be that credible consumer, being able to, the access to transport gives people access to go and spend their money that they have, go and engage in services and everything else. So it's an incredibly important thing. And yes, Debra mentioned Wave, and you're also seeing this, to a certain extent, open data being collected right now. So I've noticed recently, I've stopped using the rail booking apps because they don't update quick enough. But Google's asking you questions like, you're on the train, which carriage are you on, and how crowded is it? So that kind of data, and you can see that the trains are also now putting in information that it's less crowded in the front of the train. So you're all standing there like this, and you realise that actually, if I just go down a bit further, I might even get a seat. or there may be a wheelchair place.
Yeah.
And all this kind of stuff is really, that data is useful, because at the moment what happens is, as you will probably well know, people roll up and they're taking a chance with public transport, or they can't roll up and they have to wait and book, and some people have to, wait for 2 days to book a train. If you're a wheelchair user, you can't necessarily just turn up and get a train ticket,
Yeah.
like anyone else. You've got to book it. And you've got to, not only have you got to book it, but you don't have the equal experience, because you've got to wait for 2 days. So that's frustrating. How's that going to give you a spontaneous life? So appreciate the spontaneity element of what you're trying to do. You're also trying to sort of do sort of stuff around being the intermediary, right? So you're doing the trying to stitch together the various different transportation services. So
Yeah.
How do you do that?
So that's a very good question, and the complexity of this project, we never really underestimate that. And obviously, as a mobility as a service company, and especially when we were targeting vulnerable audience, if you like, it's whatever color. I think collaboration is such a key word that we cannot overstate the importance of that. And especially be able to collaborate with all the public transportation authorities and London planning offices. And that's the key to actually make a success of it, in order to have that efficient transportation, moving people around from A to B in a city. So it's a lot, as Antonio mentioned before, the good things about London is a lot of data open source and by APIs, such as the public transportation TfL data. They have open data culture where you can utilize a lot of them to be part of the platform. And other kind of private buses and also trains, and it's a matter of actually discussions and collaborations for them to be able to share the data, which will be a two-way relationship where we'll be able to help them to better service their customer, whether it's a train station or the train service on the train itself, or getting on and off the train from one station to another. So I think the point that you touch upon is, if we go back to kind of business side of things, kind of non-human elements of it, really what we're trying to do is to make travel efficient. Now, we have two focuses. One is the B2C part, which is the consumer part, which is the end user part, that we, the end results we want to achieve from the app and our platform is to be able to help them to achieve that spontaneous, inclusive, and efficient, that's important word, travel from A to B in Smart City. But we also have a focus on B2B as well, that collaboration with the public transportation services, as well as private taxis and share rides companies, where they be able to offer their services to our users on a platform. To achieve that in smart cities, it's got to be cross-modal transportations. It's got to be cross, even within one type of transportation, it's got to be cross different companies, including taxis. Because, for example, I know Uber is very big, it's everywhere, but not necessarily. When you're outside London, you might not have Uber as frequently as the local cab taxi companies that might be able to take you to places quicker and faster. So, yeah, so that is the two good points that you mentioned there.
Yeah, I can. Well, living outside of London, I can attest to the fact that Uber doesn't really exist in the sticks. Yeah, in the countryside, you load up Uber and you have to shrink the map by an awful lot before you start seeing any cars. So yeah, we're a long way from that. So yeah, it does need to link up with the local transportation providers to really get, to become useful. And of course, then you're kind of again reliant on them having data about their fleet. If it's a taxi company, they may have a number of accessible taxis and some less accessible. So again, it's not a trivial exercise in gathering all of this data, is it? So how many are you in CityMaaS right now, and what are your plans, and which bits are you doing first, if you can tell us a bit more about how you're going to roll it out.
So in a true style of CityMaaS and true style of me, actually, we dive in head first. So we would like to launch in London, and we believe we'll be able to make it a success in London. We'll be able to make it anywhere else in the other cities within the UK and other international cities, in fact. So we're in conversation with TfL on many different levels, from the operational side of customer service to the independent accessibility board advisor sitting on TfL, is one of our advisors, which is Cameron, the CEO of Disabilities UK. And TfL is a very key strategic partners of ours, because they not only run train, tubes, overgrounds, buses, but also they have taxi licenses as well. So they do have cover cross-modal transportation. In fact, they also cover boat service as well in the Thames. So in that perspective, so they are very key elements of our partnership, and that's cover quite a lot of transportation. But we also believe, from private taxi companies, that it's a business decision. If we'll be able to bring in users to them to demonstrate, increase the revenue, obviously that's a business case to be jumping on board with our platforms.
In order to make sure that you are able to deliver a good service and the users have a good experience, you need a lot of data, okay? And you need a lot of input. So as richer the data, the best everything will work. Of course, sometimes you might have better, sometimes less data with high quality. That also helps your algorithms. So, but today we have so many challenges about data and privacy, okay? And I was looking for, at GDPR and all regulations around it. Do you see any constraints in relation to how that could somehow make your model less effective with all the constraints that are all GDPR, or you are able to adapt? Or do you see sometimes there's a collision between, okay, data protection and the user experience for this type of users that could allow them to have an experience without any sort of interference?
Yeah, that's a very good question in terms of data privacy, personal data privacy. That's a very key things that we'll take very seriously in CityMaaS. So there'll be no personal data exchange across the platform. There will be an element of a community and social elements of the platform. People are allowed to interact, where actually ask for help or confirmations of whether the lifts in that particular station is out of service, or it was out of service. Is it better? Is it okay now? Type of interaction. And they may even interact via messages and chat window directly with each other, but then obviously all the personal information stored in our database, in our platform, will not be shared with anybody else, not even third party. When we enabling or facilitating that kind of connection among the users in the platform, it will be an anonymized kind of a way of.
So building on that, so obviously there comes a point where you have to do the sort of handover to the customer to your service provider, and so you'll have worked out the customer preference for mode of transport, accessibility needs, etc. There needs to be a point where the driver of the taxi needs to know that kind of data in order to give good customer service. So how do you handle that? And are you gathering, I guess you have to sort of gather explicit permissions that would cover that off.
So right at the beginning, when you set up a profile, once you're indicating, you decide what kind of information you would like to review. And it will not be personal information. It will also just be the necessary, absolute bare minimum necessary information that is needed for the service providers to provide a service. For example, a wheelchair user needs a taxi for the last mile after he or she got off the train to get to this destination. Then the absolutely minimal information is that the service provider will need to know the pickup station, the pickup points, which is not personal, and also the kind of facilities they need to be able to provide that service. For example, they need a ramp. That would be that kind of information, or they require some assistance to get on off for vision impaired customers, for example. And it's not the type of disability information that we'll be sharing. It will be what's needed to provide that information, if you like, from the other angle.
Right, that makes sense. So, and I'm assuming that you could essentially, through this process, help educate service providers on how to be more inclusive.
Exactly.
Excellent. So, so we're pretty much at the end of our half hour. It's been a real pleasure. Where can people find out more about CityMaaS? So you've got a website?
So yeah, they can go on to our website, which is CityMaaS, MAAS.io. That's our website. And it's currently under maintenance at the moment, server and maintenance, but it will be actually it's up now. So you can find us on the website, CityMaaS.io. You can also find us on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Twitter is quite vibrant, and you can also find us on Facebook as well. It's all under CityMaaS handle.
Yeah. So City and then MAAS.
That's
Fantastic.
Right.
Yeah, brilliant. So we need to thank our supporters, Barclays and MyClearText, for helping keep the lights on and keeping us captioned, keeping us inclusive. It's been a real pleasure, Rene. We look forward to you joining us on Twitter on Tuesday night. Thank you very much. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.